Welcome to the channel. Today we've got something incredible for you. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it an ancient secret, one that had been buried for centuries. On a quiet, moonlit night, a lone figure stepped into the forgotten path, unaware of the hidden truth that waited just ahead. A truth that, once revealed, would unravel everything they thought they knew. What will they uncover in the shadows? And will they be prepared for what lies in the dark? Stay with me, and we'll discover it together. The journey begins now. Chapter 1. The Quiet Discovery. It was an evening like no other in London, the kind where the air hung heavy with the promise of an impending storm. Yet the city was still. The streets were quieter than usual, save for the rhythmic clip-clop of carriage wheels echoing in the distance. Holmes, as always, was deep in thought, his piercing eyes fixed upon the fireplace. He was in one of his rare moments of silence, his brilliant mind working its magic on a puzzle of his own. Dr. Watson, his ever-faithful companion, sat across from him, his nose buried in the newspaper. The flickering flames cast soft shadows across their faces, adding a mysterious ambience to the room. The door to 221B Baker Street creaked open, its familiar sound pulling both men from their contemplations. A woman cloaked in a dark, heavy shawl entered. She seemed to bring with her an unsettling chill, as if the shadows had followed her through the door. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, wide with both fear and determination, locked onto Holmes's. "Mr. Holmes," she said, her voice quiet yet laden with urgency, "I need your help. There is something. I cannot explain, but I fear for my life. There is a secret I must reveal, but only to you." Holmes, who had been lost in his thoughts, immediately became alert. His eyes narrowed, the usual sharpness returning. "Sit, madam," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. "I am listening." The woman hesitated for a moment before taking a seat. She seemed frail, almost delicate, but there was a strength about her that Holmes immediately recognized. "My name is Lady Evelyn," she began, her hands trembling as she clasped them tightly in her lap. "I come from a long line of estate owners in the countryside. My family has lived there for generations, but recently something has changed. Something I cannot understand." Holmes leaned forward, his keen interest piqued. "What is it that has happened on your estate, Lady Evelyn?" She hesitated, as if gathering the strength to speak of something deeply troubling. "It is a path," she whispered. "A hidden path, one that was lost to time. I stumbled upon it by accident, and since that day strange things have been happening. I hear whispers, voices that are not mine, coming from the trees, the very air around me. It's as if the path is alive, and it's trying to tell me something, or perhaps warn me." Watson exchanged a curious glance with Holmes, but it was Holmes who spoke first, his voice soothing but intense. "A hidden path, you say? How long has it been forgotten, and what do you believe it leads to?" Lady Evelyn's eyes darkened, as if haunted by the thought. "It was part of the grounds, overgrown and left undisturbed for years. But I've recently found signs that someone has been there, someone who shouldn't have been." She paused, taking a deep breath. "There is a chapel on the estate, long abandoned, and the path leads directly to it. But now I fear it is not just the chapel that holds something dangerous. It is the path itself." Holmes, ever the pragmatist, considered the situation carefully. "And you have seen nothing yourself, nothing to explain the cause of these disturbances?" Lady Evelyn shook her head. "No, but I have heard the voices, whispers, faint but unmistakable, calling me to the path. At first I thought it was my imagination, but it grows louder each day and I can no longer ignore it. There was a long silence as Holmes took in this new information. His mind was already working, piecing together the fragments of her story. A hidden path, a forgotten chapel, strange whispers in the night. There was something unsettling about it all, something that called to his instincts. Finally, Holmes broke the silence. "Lady Evelyn, I believe you may be in danger, but more than that, I believe there is a mystery to be solved, a secret that is begging to be uncovered. I shall accompany you to your estate and investigate these disturbances myself." Lady Evelyn's eyes widened in relief, though there was still a shadow of fear in her gaze. "You will come. You will uncover the truth." Holmes stood, his face unreadable but his manner calm. "I will find the answers, madam. Rest assured. But beware, for sometimes the truth we seek is not the one we wish to find." As the fire crackled softly in the background, Holmes turned to Watson, who had been silent through the exchange. "Watson, prepare for a journey. We leave at first light." Watson, ever the loyal companion, nodded in agreement. "Of course, Holmes. But I must admit this one has the air of something unsettling." Holmes's lips twitched into a slight smile. "Indeed, Watson. But that, my dear friend, is what makes it all the more interesting." And with that, the stage was set. The mystery of the hidden path, wrapped in whispers and shadows, would soon unfold. As Holmes and Watson prepared for the journey ahead, the quiet hum of suspense filled the room, promising that whatever lay ahead, it would be a mystery like no other. The game was afoot. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Path. The morning after Lady Evelyn's visit dawned grey and still, with the air holding the soft chill of early autumn. The sun had barely risen, casting a pale light over London's bustling streets, as Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson prepared to embark on their journey to the countryside. The mood was quiet, almost contemplative, as they packed their belongings for the road. Watson, always eager for a new adventure, felt an unusual tension in the air, as if the very atmosphere was charged with the unknown. "Holmes," Watson ventured as they finished their preparations, "do you believe this hidden path truly holds something sinister, or is it the product of Lady Evelyn's imagination?" Holmes, as usual, was already lost in thought. He adjusted his coat, his sharp gaze never leaving the streets below. "There is nothing more dangerous than the human mind when it is unsettled, Watson. Lady Evelyn's fears may be well founded, but I suspect there is far more at play here than mere superstition." With that, they made their way to the train station, their destination set for the secluded estate in the countryside. The journey was quiet, with little conversation between them, the rhythmic clatter of the train wheels lulling them into a quiet contemplation. Holmes, ever the observer, took note of the small details, the way the passengers' movements seemed hurried, the unusual pattern of fog drifting across the tracks. He was aware that every piece of the puzzle, no matter how seemingly insignificant, might soon reveal its purpose. As the train slowed and finally stopped at a small station in the heart of the countryside, Holmes and Watson disembarked into the cool, crisp air. Lady Evelyn was waiting for them, her demeanour tense, her eyes scanning the surroundings with evident anxiety. "Thank you for coming," she greeted them softly. "I am afraid the situation has only worsened since I last saw you." They exchanged pleasantries, but it was clear that Lady Evelyn's mind was elsewhere, constantly darting around as if she expected something, or someone to appear from the shadows. "You mentioned the path leads to an old chapel," Holmes asked, his voice calm and soothing. "Yes," Lady Evelyn replied. "It's difficult to explain. The path itself is nearly invisible, overgrown with thick brambles and wild foliage. But once you step onto it, the air feels different, heavier, charged with a strange energy, as if the ground beneath your feet is alive with secrets. Holmes's eyes sparkled with interest, but he kept his tone steady. "And you've walked this path yourself, Lady Evelyn?" She nodded, her face tightening. "Once, but not again. After hearing the whispers, I couldn't bring myself to go back alone. But you must see for yourself. It's a part of the estate that is hidden from view, even from most of the staff. Only a few of the older groundskeepers know of its existence, and they refuse to speak of it." Holmes and Watson followed Lady Evelyn through the sprawling grounds of the estate. The landscape was serene, almost dreamlike, with rolling hills in the distance and trees that seemed to have stood for centuries. Yet, despite its outward beauty, there was a peculiar stillness to the air, a quietness that felt out of place, as if the world itself was holding its breath. They reached the edge of the estate, where a thick line of trees formed a natural barrier. Lady Evelyn paused, pointing towards a narrow opening in the dense underbrush. "There," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "That is where the path begins." Holmes examined the entrance, his sharp eyes taking in every detail. The trees were ancient, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like hands in the dim light. The air here was cooler, and the distant murmur of the wind seemed to carry something else, a whisper, almost imperceptible, but undeniably present. Without a word, Holmes stepped forward, followed by Watson and Lady Evelyn. As they moved deeper into the woods, the undergrowth grew thicker, the path narrowing until they were forced to duck under low-hanging branches. The ground was uneven, with roots tangled beneath their feet, and the soft murmur of the wind began to grow louder, as if it was speaking in hushed tones. Holmes's senses were heightened, alert to every rustle, every faint sound. His mind worked quickly, analysing the clues, the disturbed earth beneath their feet, the way the trees seemed to bend toward them, as though they were guiding them onward. It wasn't just the path itself that intrigued him. It was the very sensation that seemed to emanate from it, an energy that he couldn't quite explain. "It feels as if we are not alone," Watson remarked, his voice low and cautious. Holmes glanced at him, his expression unreadable. "That is because we are not, Watson. This path holds something that wants to remain hidden. But whether it's a thing of the past or something more present, I cannot yet say." As they continued, the trees began to thin, revealing a small clearing. There, in the centre of the glade, stood the chapel, small, weathered, and covered in ivy. The once proud structure now appeared to be crumbling, its stone walls weathered by time and neglect. The roof was partially collapsed, and the windows, once adorned with stained glass, were now little more than shattered remnants of their former beauty. Lady Evelyn stopped at the edge of the clearing, her eyes filled with dread. "This is where I found it," she whispered. "This is where I first heard the voices." Holmes approached the chapel, his gaze sweeping over the scene. He could feel it now, the strange presence that seemed to saturate the air. There was something undeniably unsettling about the place. Yet Holmes's curiosity burned stronger than any sense of unease. He stepped closer to the chapel's entrance, careful not to disturb the fragile ground beneath him. "Observe, Watson," Holmes murmured, his voice steady. "The chapel may be abandoned, but it is not without purpose. Whoever sought to hide the path here, whoever placed the chapel as a guard, had something to protect. We are not merely walking through history, my friend. We are walking through a secret." As Holmes examined the chapel's exterior, he noticed something strange. Faint, almost imperceptible markings on the stone walls. as though they had been etched there deliberately. Symbols that were unfamiliar, cryptic in nature, yet they seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. Watson, unable to shake the eerie feeling that gripped him, glanced around the clearing, his eyes drawn to the shadows that seemed to stretch unnaturally long. "Holmes, do you hear that?" Holmes paused, his keen hearing picking up on the faintest sound, a whisper, soft, barely discernible but unmistakable. "The path is speaking," Holmes said, his voice a mere whisper now. "We are on the verge of uncovering something, Watson, and it will not be a gentle discovery." As the wind rustled through the trees and the whispers seemed to grow louder, the tension in the air became palpable. Holmes's mind raced with possibilities, but one thing was certain. The hidden path had far more to reveal than either of them could have imagined. And as they stood on the precipice of something deeper, darker, and more ancient, the mystery of the hidden path beckoned them forward, urging them to discover the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. Chapter 3. The journey begins. The morning sun stretched lazily over the horizon, painting the sky in delicate shades of amber and rose as Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn gathered outside the crumbling chapel. The air felt thick with the weight of the unknown, as if the land itself were holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to unlock its secrets. The strange feeling from the previous day had not dissipated. The stillness of the countryside was unnerving, but it wasn't the silence that had unsettled Holmes. It was the way everything seemed to lean in, as though the very trees, the earth, and the whispers in the wind were conspiring to conceal something just beyond their grasp. Holmes stood at the edge of the clearing, his sharp eyes scanning the area. The chapel, now shrouded in a faint mist that clung to the earth like an old secret, seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy. The overgrown ivy clung to the stone walls as though trying to protect the building from the passage of time. Yet even as the remnants of history crumbled, there was a persistent hum, quiet but tangible, that filled the air. "Holmes, what do you think?" Watson asked, his voice low, as if afraid to disturb the fragile calm of the place. Holmes didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and withdrew his magnifying glass, bending down to examine the ground beneath his feet. The dirt was soft, disturbed in places, with faint impressions of boots and the scuff of movement, recent movement by the look of it. "The path," Holmes murmured, "was not as abandoned as we were led to believe. Someone has been here recently, someone who knows exactly what they're doing." Lady Evelyn's face tightened at his words. "You see? I knew it. Someone has been watching me. Lady Evelyn," Holmes interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "You are not in immediate danger. But something is afoot here. We are walking in the footsteps of those who have come before us." Holmes rose from his crouch and glanced toward the chapel once more, a spark of intrigue flickering in his eyes. "Let us enter the chapel. We must see it for ourselves." The three of them stepped carefully through the ivy-clad entrance, the ancient wooden door creaking open with an eerie groan, as though it had been disturbed from a deep, undisturbed slumber. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying the smell of moss and decay. The chapel's interior was dark, with only the soft light filtering through the broken stained glass windows to illuminate the surroundings. The beams of sunlight cast fractured patterns on the floor, their colors distorted, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. Holmes walked slowly, his eyes taking in every detail. The cracked pews, the shattered altar, the faded frescoes that had long since lost their vibrancy. The place seemed forgotten, abandoned to time. But there was something about it, something almost alive, as if the chapel itself was holding on to its secrets with a fierce determination. "I don't like this place," Watson murmured, his voice echoing softly in the stillness. "There's a sense of foreboding, Holmes." "As though we are being watched," Holmes nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth of Watson's words without comment. His mind was already racing ahead, analysing the chapel's layout, the patterns in the dust, and the strange, heavy atmosphere that seemed to settle over them like a weight. "I've noticed something," Holmes said, his voice steady and calm as he approached the altar. "The chapel may appear abandoned, but it is not without purpose. Every detail here is too deliberate, too precise." Watson's eyes followed Holmes as he knelt near the altar, where a small, peculiar object had caught his attention. Holmes gently lifted a loose stone, revealing a hidden compartment beneath the floor. Inside was a small, weathered box, its surface covered in intricate engravings, worn smooth by centuries of time. The box itself was unremarkable at first glance, but as Holmes carefully opened it, a strange, faint sound filled the air. A soft murmur, like the rustle of leaves in a distant breeze, as though the box contained a secret not meant for their ears. Inside, nestled in the velvet lining, was a single piece of parchment. It appeared old, its edges frayed, but the writing on it was unmistakable. Holmes held the parchment up to the light, his eyes scanning the words. "This," he said softly, "is a map of sorts. A map that shows more than just the chapel. It leads to something deeper, something hidden." Lady Evelyn stepped closer, her face pale with worry. "What does it mean, Mr. Holmes? What is it pointing to?" Holmes did not answer immediately. Instead, he traced the faint lines of the map with his finger, his mind working furiously. "This is no ordinary map," he murmured. "It's a key, an invitation to something buried beneath the surface, something guarded by both time and secrecy." Watson glanced at Holmes, then at Lady Evelyn. But what could it be? What are we dealing with here? Holmes turned, his expression unreadable but intense. "Whatever it is, Watson, it is not of this world. The path we are on is far more than a mere forgotten route. It is a portal, guarded by whispers, shadows, and hidden truths." Lady Evelyn's voice trembled. "But what if someone is already there? What if they've found it before us?" Holmes's gaze shifted to her, his eyes softening ever so slightly. "If someone is watching you, Lady Evelyn, we will find them. And we will find the truth." The three of them stood in the dim light of the chapel, the weight of the moment settling around them like the thick mist that had begun to creep into the clearing outside. Holmes folded the parchment carefully and placed it back into the box, securing it before turning toward the doctor. The mystery had deepened, the path before them becoming ever more treacherous and uncertain. As they stepped back into the cool air outside, a sense of unease clung to them. The whispers, faint but persistent, seemed to follow them, filling the space between breaths. They could not ignore the feeling that something unseen was watching them, guiding them toward an unknown destination. Holmes stood at the threshold of the chapel, looking out into the mist-filled woods. His expression was as composed as ever, but his mind was sharp, his senses heightened. The game had begun, but this was no ordinary mystery. It was a puzzle wrapped in shadows, one that could lead to answers, or to something far darker. "There is much we do not yet understand," Holmes said softly. "But we are closer, Watson. We are closer than ever." Lady Evelyn, standing behind them, clutched her shawl tightly, her face a mask of worry and uncertainty. But she too knew that they had no choice but to continue forward. The path had called to them, and now there was no turning back. With one final glance at the chapel, They turned and ventured deeper into the woods, each step pulling them further into the mystery. Chapter 4. The Whispering Shadows. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the light of the afternoon began to fade, giving way to the encroaching twilight. The once vibrant countryside had transformed into an eerie, almost oppressive atmosphere. The trees, ancient and thick with ivy, loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their gnarled branches intertwining to form a dark canopy that seemed to absorb the very light. There was a peculiar stillness in the air, as though the land itself had become mute, waiting for something, or someone, to break its silence. Holmes walked ahead with his usual quiet determination, his eyes scanning the ground, the trees, and every subtle shift in the air. Watson, trailing behind him, couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It wasn't just a passing sensation. No, it was far more real, more palpable. Every rustle in the underbrush, every flicker in the shadows, made him turn his head, his instincts screaming at him that something wasn't right. "Holmes," Watson said, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Do you feel that? The air, it's different here. The whispers, they've grown louder." Holmes gave a slow nod, his face impassive but his mind working at full speed. "Yes, Watson, I hear them too," he murmured, his voice soothing, almost calming. "The whispering. It is not your imagination. But we must remain focused. There is something deeper at play here, and we are walking the very path it wants us to follow." Lady Evelyn, walking beside Watson, seemed increasingly uneasy. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her eyes wide with fear. "I've never felt this way before," she said, her voice shaking. "It's as if the path itself is trying to guide us, to pull us towards something. But I can't explain what. I don't understand it." Holmes stopped for a moment, his sharp gaze scanning the horizon. He had not yet spoken of it to Watson, but he too had sensed a strange pull, an almost magnetic force that seemed to guide their every step. The path they were on was not simply a forgotten route. It was a deliberate journey, one that had been planned and set in motion long before their arrival. But who, or what, was pulling them, and why? "We are not merely walking through the woods, Lady Evelyn," Holmes said, his voice deep and steady, yet laced with the kind of quiet intensity that could only come from his years of experience. "We are walking through a place of memory, a place of secrets. It is no coincidence that you were drawn here. The path was meant for you, and now, it seems, it is meant for us as well." As they continued forward, the light grew dimmer, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, their tendrils creeping over the ground like the fingers of some unseen hand. The whispers too had grown louder, clearer. At first they had been a faint murmur, barely perceptible over the sound of their footsteps, but now they were unmistakable. A low, eerie voice that seemed to come from every direction. Holmes paused again, his eyes narrowing as he listened intently. There was something deeply unsettling about the voices, yet at the same time they seemed almost soothing, like a lullaby sung by ghosts long past. The words were indecipherable, muffled by the thick air, but they carried an unmistakable message, one that resonated with a deep, ancient truth. "Do you hear that, Watson?" Holmes asked quietly. Watson nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Yes, but what is it? It sounds familiar, like a language I should know but can't quite understand." Holmes turned to Lady Evelyn, his expression softening for the first time. "This path," he said, his voice low but filled with purpose, "has been waiting for you. And now, it has called us. We must listen carefully, for the answer lies within the shadows." They pressed on, and the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and the faintest hint of decay. It felt as though the very ground they walked upon was watching them, listening to them, reacting to their presence. Every step felt like an intrusion, a disruption of something ancient, something that had remained undisturbed for centuries. Finally, they reached a clearing. The forest opened up before them, revealing a strange and ancient stone circle, half sunken into the earth. The stones were covered in moss and lichen, their surfaces worn smooth by time, but there was something undeniably powerful about them. The air around the stones hummed, a faint vibration that seemed to resonate in the very core of their being. Holmes stepped forward, his eyes tracing the markings on the stones, each one inscribed with symbols that appeared almost foreign, yet somehow familiar. The language was unlike anything Watson had ever seen, a blend of ancient scripts and forgotten hieroglyphs. It was as if the stones themselves held a secret, one that could only be unlocked by the right person at the right time. Lady Evelyn took a tentative step forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to touch one of the stones. As her fingers brushed against its surface, the whispering grew louder, the voices rising in pitch and intensity, as though the stones themselves were reacting to her touch. For a moment everything was still. The whispers faded into the background, replaced by a deep, resonant hum that filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. It was as though the very earth was speaking to them, urging them to understand something ancient and powerful, something that had been buried for generations. Lady Evelyn, Holmes said softly, his voice carrying a sense of calm determination. This is what the path has led us to. These stones, this place, it is the key to understanding everything that has come before. But we must tread carefully. The answers we seek may not be what we expect. The truth here is old, and it has been guarded for a reason. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, stirring the leaves and sending a chill through the air. The whispers returned, now more urgent, more insistent. They seemed to be calling out to Lady Evelyn, urging her to understand the truth they had hidden for so long. Holmes stepped closer to the stone circle, his mind racing with possibilities. "It's as if the very stones are alive," he muttered. "They've been waiting for someone to unlock their secrets." Lady Evelyn, her face pale with a mixture of fear and fascination, looked up at Holmes. "What does this mean, Mr. Holmes? What is it that they want from me?" Holmes regarded her with a gaze that was both comforting and knowing. "The path, Lady Evelyn, has always led to you. You are the one who must uncover the truth. But the journey is not over yet. We have merely taken the first step. The shadows will guide us, but we must be ready for what lies ahead." As the wind died down and the forest returned to its eerie silence, the whispers seemed to fade into the distance, leaving behind only the sound of the earth beneath their feet. The path had spoken, and now it was time to listen. Holmes turned to Watson, his expression resolute. "We have come far, but we are only beginning to understand. The answers are here, Watson. They are hidden within the stones, within the shadows, and we must uncover them, no matter where it leads." With that, the trio stood in the clearing, the air still heavy with the presence of something ancient and powerful. The path had led them this far, but the journey was far from over. There were deeper mysteries yet to uncover, and the shadows whispered that they were only scratching the surface. And so, with the weight of the world upon their shoulders, Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn continued forward, toward whatever waited in the darkness. Chapter 5. The Hidden Truth. The morning mist still lingered in the air as Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn stood within the ancient stone circle. The sun, rising reluctantly over the distant hills, cast long shadows across the clearing. The air was still, almost too still, as though the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to make the next move. Lady Evelyn stood near the stone circle, her hands trembling as she traced the faded markings with her fingertips. Her face was pale, her eyes distant, as though the very presence of the stones was pulling her deeper into a place she could not yet fully understand. Holmes and Watson stood at a respectful distance, allowing her the space she needed. But Holmes, ever the observer, watched her closely, his sharp eyes catching every subtle movement. "Holmes," Watson said quietly, his voice carrying a hint of unease. "What do you think? What is it about these stones? They seem alive somehow." Holmes glanced at Watson, his expression thoughtful. "Not alive, Watson, but certainly powerful. These markings, these symbols, they are not mere decorations. They are part of a language, an ancient one, tied to something far older than we can imagine. And I believe Lady Evelyn is the key to understanding it all." Lady Evelyn, hearing Holmes's words, looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and confusion. "What do you mean? What am I supposed to do? I don't understand any of this. These stones, they keep calling to me. But why? Why me?" Holmes's gaze softened, his voice calm and soothing. "I cannot say for certain yet, Lady Evelyn. But I do believe you have been brought here for a reason. These stones, this path, it is all connected to your family's past, perhaps even to your very bloodline. And the whispers, the calling, they are guiding you, pulling you towards something that has been hidden for generations." Watson, unable to contain his growing anxiety, took a step forward. "But what exactly are we dealing with, Holmes? A curse? A secret society? What is it that these stones guard?" Holmes, who had been lost in thought for a moment, now turned to Watson, his eyes narrowed with focus. "It is neither a curse nor a secret society, Watson. It is something much older, much more profound. The path, these stones, they are guarding a truth, one that has been buried beneath the earth for centuries. And that truth, I suspect, is connected to the very origins of Lady Evelyn's family." The wind, which had been still for so long, suddenly stirred the leaves, carrying with it a faint sound, an echo of the whispers that had been growing louder since their arrival. The sound was clearer now, sharper, almost as though the forest itself was speaking directly to them. Lady Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she heard the whispers grow louder. Her face flushed with a mixture of fear and realization. "I've heard those voices before. In the garden, on the path. But I never understood what they were saying. Now I feel like I can almost hear them clearly." Holmes stepped closer to the stone circle, his eyes scanning the symbols again. "What if they are not just whispers, Lady Evelyn? What if they are trying to tell you something, guide you to something?" Lady Evelyn nodded slowly, her hands now gripping the stone at the center of the circle. The hum in the air grew stronger, almost vibrating with energy, as if the very stones themselves were coming alive under her touch. Suddenly, a burst of wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down their spines. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly, and Holmes's sharp eyes caught a flicker of movement in the shadows beyond the stone circle. He froze, his mind working at lightning speed, his instincts on high alert. "Watson," Holmes murmured, his voice steady but urgent. "Something is coming." Before Watson could respond, a figure emerged from the trees, stepping into the clearing with an almost spectral presence. It was a man, tall and dressed in dark, tattered clothing, his face hidden beneath a hood. His movements were fluid, almost unnatural, and the whispers seemed to intensify as he drew closer. Lady Evelyn recoiled, her hand still on the stone, but her fear was palpable. "Who is he?" What does he want? Holmes's eyes never left the figure as he stepped forward, his gaze intense yet calm. I don't know, Lady Evelyn, but we will find out soon enough. The figure stopped at the edge of the stone circle, his presence almost overpowering. There was an air of finality to him, as though he had been waiting for this moment, for this meeting. Holmes's gaze flicked to Watson and then back to the figure, his mind already piecing together the puzzle. "Who are you?" Holmes asked, his voice firm but unthreatening. The man lifted his head slightly, revealing only his eyes, dark, penetrating and full of knowledge that seemed to stretch back through the ages. His voice, when it came, was low, smooth, and carrying an air of authority. "I am the keeper," the man said simply, "the keeper of the path, the keeper of the secret that has been buried for centuries. And now, you have found it. Or perhaps it has found you." Watson, ever the skeptic, stepped forward, his hand instinctively resting on the hilt of his cane. "A keeper of a secret? What does that mean? What is this secret you speak of?" The man's eyes flicked to Watson, and for the briefest moment, something like a smile curled at the corners of his lips. "The secret is not for you to know, not yet. But Lady Evelyn, she is the one. She is the key to unlocking it. Her family has guarded it for generations, hidden in plain sight. The truth you seek lies within her bloodline, and the path you are on is only the beginning of the journey." Holmes's eyes never left the man. "And what exactly are you here to do? To stop us? To protect this secret at all costs?" The man's gaze turned to Lady Evelyn, his eyes darkening. "I am here to guide her, to ensure that the truth is revealed in its proper time. But there are those who would seek to use this knowledge for their own gain. They would use it to control, to bend the world to their will, and I will not allow that." Lady Evelyn, trembling, took a step back. "What truth? What do you mean? I don't understand." The keeper's eyes softened for a moment, almost with pity. "You are not meant to understand yet, Lady Evelyn. The path has chosen you, but it is not yet time for you to walk it fully. You must prepare yourself, for the knowledge you seek will change everything you know." He turned and began to walk back toward the trees, his voice lingering in the air, almost as though the words were being carried by the wind itself. "The truth lies within the stones," the keeper's voice echoed. "And when the time is right, Lady Evelyn, you will know what to do." With that, he disappeared into the forest, vanishing into the shadows as if he had never been there at all. The whispers, once again, seemed to fade into the background, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn stood in the clearing, the weight of the encounter settling over them like a thick fog. Holmes's mind was working furiously, piecing together the new puzzle they had encountered. "Well, Watson," Holmes said, breaking the silence, "it seems we have more questions than answers. But this keeper, this guardian of the truth, he's not the only one who knows of this path, and Lady Evelyn, I suspect, is far more connected to this mystery than even she realizes." Watson, still processing the encounter, nodded slowly. "It's clear we've only uncovered the tip of the iceberg, Holmes. But what exactly is this secret, and why has it been kept hidden for so long?" Holmes's gaze shifted back to Lady Evelyn, his expression softening as he spoke to her directly. "The truth, Lady Evelyn, will be revealed in time. But for now, you must trust that you are the key. The path is yours to walk, and together we will uncover what has been hidden for centuries." With the keeper's words echoing in their minds, they turned back toward the stone circle, their steps slower now, as if the very earth beneath them was carrying the weight of their journey. There was much to uncover. But with each step, they knew they were getting closer to the heart of the mystery, the heart of the truth. And when they reached it, there would be no turning back. Chapter 6. The Unseen Watcher. The morning light filtered weakly through the canopy of trees, casting long, dappled shadows on the ground. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a feeling of quiet anticipation hanging in the air. As Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn made their way deeper into the forest, a subtle unease clung to them, more oppressive than any physical weight. The path they followed had grown narrower, the undergrowth denser, until they could barely move without stepping carefully over twisted roots and tangled vines. The whispers, which had been faint at first, were now more pronounced, echoing in the distance as though the forest itself was speaking, calling them towards something hidden, something that had long been buried. Lady Evelyn, her face pale and her brow furrowed with worry, glanced nervously over her shoulder. "I don't like this place, Mr. Holmes. It's as though the forest is alive, watching us." Holmes, as always, was unbothered by the tension, his sharp mind already focused on the mystery at hand. His eyes scanned the surrounding trees, the ground beneath their feet, and the faint traces of disturbed earth that seemed to suggest they were not the only ones walking this path. "Yes," Holmes said slowly, his voice smooth and calm. "I agree. There is something about this place that feels unsettling. But we must press on. The path is leading us towards something important, something we must uncover." Watson, though outwardly more composed, couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every rustling sound, every subtle shift in the air seemed to be heightened, as if something or someone was lurking just beyond the trees, observing their every move. "I have the distinct feeling we're not alone," Watson murmured, his eyes darting nervously around the dense underbrush. "And I don't think it's just the forest making these sounds." Holmes nodded, his gaze never leaving the shadows ahead. "I believe you are right, Watson. We're being watched, but not by the trees or the wind. There is something or someone following us. The question is, who?" The group continued down the path, each of them aware of the unsettling quiet that seemed to press in around them. The further they ventured, the thicker the air became, heavy with anticipation and tension. It was as if they were walking deeper into the heart of the mystery, towards something that had been waiting for them for a long time. Finally, they arrived at a clearing, a small secluded space within the woods where the trees seemed to part to allow the light to spill in. At the center of the clearing stood an old stone structure, half sunken into the earth, its edges worn and weathered by time. It was a forgotten place, obscured by the overgrown underbrush, but unmistakably significant. Holmes stepped forward, his eyes narrowing as he took in the structure. It was ancient, its surfaces covered in moss and vines, and the air around it seemed to hum with an almost palpable energy. There was something about it that felt like the final piece of a puzzle, but Holmes couldn't yet make sense of it. "Do you feel it, Watson?" Holmes asked, his voice soft but tinged with excitement. "The energy here, the presence. It's as if this place has been waiting for us." Watson nodded, his unease growing. "It's strange, Holmes. I feel as though we've stepped into a place outside of time, something that was never meant to be found." Lady Evelyn, standing behind them, clutched her shawl tightly around her shoulders. "This place," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't remember ever seeing it before, but somehow I feel like I've been here before. In my dreams, perhaps. The stones, these markings, they all feel familiar." Holmes turned to her, his face softening with understanding. You're not wrong, Lady Evelyn. These markings, they're not random. They are part of the ancient language we've been tracing. This place, this structure, is the next step in our journey. He stepped forward, carefully examining the stone walls. The carvings were intricate, worn by time, but still visible in the faint light. They depicted scenes of people, ancient figures, dressed in robes and adorned with strange symbols. Their eyes were wide, staring out from the stone as though trying to communicate a message that had long since been forgotten. Holmes's eyes gleamed with excitement as he traced one of the symbols with his fingers. This is it, Watson. This is what we've been searching for. These are the key markings, the last pieces of the puzzle that will unlock the truth. Just as Holmes was about to speak again, there was a sudden rustling in the trees behind them. All three of them turned, their senses immediately heightened, but there was nothing there, just the shadows shifting in the breeze. Lady Evelyn's eyes widened in fear. Did you hear that? Holmes turned back to the stone structure, his brow furrowing as he studied the surroundings. Yes, I heard it, but I believe it was no mere animal. Someone is close, watching us. They are waiting for the right moment. Watson's hand instinctively moved to the handle of his cane, his body tense with the realization that they were not alone in this hidden part of the woods. Who would be following us, Holmes? And why? Holmes remained silent for a moment, his mind working furiously. He could feel the pull of the mystery, the invisible thread that had been guiding them from the beginning. But now it was clearer than ever that someone, perhaps someone from Lady Evelyn's past, was waiting for them to uncover this secret. But who? Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the clearing, stepping from the shadows with a grace that seemed unnatural. It was a woman, her face partially obscured by a veil, her clothes dark and flowing like the night itself. She moved with an eerie silence, as though she were part of the forest, blending seamlessly with its surroundings. Lady Evelyn gasped, recognizing the figure at once. No, it can't be you. Holmes stepped forward, his eyes narrowing with caution. Who are you? He asked, his voice firm and commanding. The woman did not speak at first. Instead, she took a step closer, her eyes locked on Lady Evelyn, as if she were seeing something, someone she had long been searching for. Then her voice, when it came, was soft and cold, as though it carried the weight of 1,000 secrets. I am the one who has been watching, the woman said, her voice low but clear. I am the one who has been waiting for you, Lady Evelyn. You, and only you, can unlock what has been hidden here. Lady Evelyn took a step back, her hands shaking as the realization dawned on her. You're one of them, aren't you? The ones who have been guarding the secret for generations. But why now? Why me? The woman's lips curled into a faint smile, but it was a smile that held no warmth. Because it is time. The secret is no longer safe, and you, Lady Evelyn, are the only one who can decide what happens next. Holmes's gaze flicked between the woman and Lady Evelyn, his mind racing as he pieced together the last few clues. What is it you want from Lady Evelyn? What is this secret you speak of? The woman's eyes shifted to Holmes, her expression unreadable. The secret is not for you, Mr. Holmes. It is for her, and now the path will reveal its true nature. As the woman spoke, the air around them seemed to thicken, the whispers in the forest growing louder, more insistent. It was as if the very earth beneath their feet was alive with anticipation, waiting for the next step, the next revelation. Holmes stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with purpose. Then let us uncover it once and for all. Whatever this secret is, Lady Evelyn will face it with the truth. The woman's gaze softened for a brief moment, but her expression quickly returned to one of cold resolve. "The truth is a dangerous thing, Mr. Holmes. But if you are prepared, then come. The truth is waiting." With that, the figure turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving the three of them standing in the clearing, their hearts racing with the realization that the path they had followed had now led them into the heart of the mystery. The truth was within their reach, but whether it would be a blessing or a curse, none of them could yet know. Chapter 7. The Hidden Passage. The moonlight, pale and quiet, bathed the forest in an ethereal glow as Holmes, Watson and Lady Evelyn stood in the clearing, the weight of the woman's words still heavy in the air. The figure, who had stepped from the shadows and revealed herself as one of the ancient guardians, had left them with more questions than answers. Holmes's mind raced, his thoughts circling back to the stone circle, the strange symbols, and the woman's cryptic words. The forest, though dark, was no longer silent. The rustling of the leaves seemed to murmur in response to the strange energy that lingered in the air, as if the woods themselves were waiting for the next move. Holmes could feel the invisible threads of the mystery pulling him further, deeper into the unknown. "Holmes," Watson said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Who was she? And what is it she's trying to tell Lady Evelyn?" Holmes stood motionless for a moment, his eyes scanning the darkened trees, his mind piecing together fragments of information. "I don't know, Watson. But she has given us a clue. Lady Evelyn, you are the key. The path has led us to this point for a reason, and we must follow it to its end." Lady Evelyn, who had been silent for some time, looked to Holmes, her face pale and drawn with the weight of everything she had learned. "I don't know if I can do this, Mr. Holmes. I don't know what this secret is or why it's been hidden for so long. But now I feel it. This pull, this weight in my heart. It's like I'm being called to something I can't escape." Holmes's voice softened, his tone gentle but filled with authority. "You are not alone in this, Lady Evelyn. We will face whatever is hidden here together. We are closer to the truth than ever, and the path is waiting for us to take the next step." With that, Holmes motioned for them to follow him, his eyes locked on the shadows that lay beyond the clearing. There was something out there, a passage, a doorway, that was waiting for them. It wasn't just the whispers in the wind or the uneasy feeling of being watched. It was something deeper, something older. The forest, the stones, and the woman who had come to them had all led them to this point. But what awaited them at the end of the path was still a mystery. As they moved forward, the forest grew quieter, the sounds of the night fading into a stillness that was almost unnatural. Holmes led them through the trees, his every step deliberate, his senses heightened. He could feel it, an invisible force pushing them forward, urging them to follow the path that had been set in motion long ago. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet shifted. A subtle tremor ran through the earth, and Holmes stopped, his eyes narrowing. "Watson, do you feel that?" Watson, who had been walking behind him, nodded. "Yes, it's as though the earth itself is moving." Holmes's sharp gaze flicked to Lady Evelyn, who had grown even more nervous. "What is it, Mr. Holmes? What's happening?" Holmes said nothing, but instead he stepped closer to the edge of the clearing, where the shadows were deepest. He raised his hand and motioned for them to stop. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice low and filled with caution. "The passage is here." Lady Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she looked to where Holmes pointed. Beneath the thick roots of an ancient tree, hidden from sight, was a narrow, dark opening in the ground. It was barely visible, but the subtle shift in the earth had revealed it. "This is it," Holmes said quietly, his voice filled with a quiet reverence. "This is the hidden passage that will take us deeper into the mystery." Lady Evelyn took a hesitant step forward, her face filled with both fear and wonder. "But this passage leads underground. What are we about to uncover, Mr. Holmes?" Holmes turned to face her, his expression softened by understanding. "What we uncover will be the final piece of this puzzle, the truth that has been hidden from us for so long. But we cannot turn back now. We must know." With that, Holmes crouched down and began to clear away the underbrush, revealing more of the passage. The air around them felt thicker, more charged, and the faint whispering returned, louder now, as if the very ground beneath them was speaking. There was no turning back. The path had led them here, and the truth, however dangerous it might be, was waiting just beyond the darkness. "After you, Lady Evelyn," Holmes said, motioning for her to go first. "This is your journey. We are here to guide you, but the path is yours to walk." Lady Evelyn hesitated for a moment, her fear palpable, but she nodded, steeling herself. "I'll go," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I have to." She stepped forward, followed closely by Holmes and Watson as they descended into the passage. The earth was damp beneath their feet, the walls of the tunnel smooth and cold. The air inside was musty, filled with the scent of ancient stone and decay, yet it was also tinged with something else, a faint sweetness, almost like the smell of old books and forgotten knowledge. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, the whispers grew louder. The sounds weren't clear at first, just an indistinct murmur. But soon, the words became more distinct, more coherent. It was as though they were hearing voices from another time, voices that had long since faded away, but were now being revived by the path they had walked. Holmes's steps were calculated, steady. He was listening carefully, his mind piecing together the fragments of the voices that swirled around them. "The path is speaking, Watson," he murmured, his voice low. "It is guiding us, showing us the way." Watson, feeling the weight of the moment, couldn't help but feel a chill crawl down his spine. "What is it saying, Holmes?" Holmes did not answer immediately. Instead, he held up his hand, signaling for them to stop. The passage had opened up into a larger chamber, vast and ancient, with walls adorned in intricate carvings. The carvings were unlike anything Watson had ever seen, symbols of celestial bodies, of beings that seemed to exist both human and divine. It was a story written in stone, a history of something that had been lost to time. In the center of the chamber stood an altar, the stone worn smooth by centuries of use. Atop it lay a single object, shrouded in a cloth. Holmes approached it cautiously, his eyes never leaving the altar, as if he were aware that every detail was part of something larger, something that had been waiting to be uncovered. Lady Evelyn, standing behind him, stepped forward slowly, her eyes drawn to the object. "What is it, Mr. Holmes?" she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Holmes reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as he removed the cloth from the object. As it was unveiled, a gasp escaped from Lady Evelyn's lips. There on the altar was a large, ancient tome, its pages thick with age, its cover adorned with the same strange symbols that had been carved into the walls. "This," Holmes said softly, reverently, "is the truth." The whispers, now clearer than ever, seemed to rise to a crescendo as Holmes lifted the book, its weight seeming to pull at the very fabric of reality around them. The chamber grew darker, the air heavier, as if the passage itself was acknowledging the discovery. But as Holmes held the tome, something shifted, a sound, a movement in the shadows. Watson's instincts flared, and he turned quickly, but saw nothing. Yet the feeling of being watched, of being hunted, was undeniable. "This is it," Holmes said, turning to face Lady Evelyn. "The truth has been hidden in these pages. But the journey is far from over. What you decide next will change everything." Lady Evelyn took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the book. "What must I do?" Holmes held her gaze for a moment, his expression both reassuring and filled with the weight of what was to come. "You must open it. You must learn what has been kept from you and from the world so long." With trembling hands, Lady Evelyn reached forward, her fingers brushing against the ancient tome, and the air around them seemed to hum with anticipation. The truth, whatever it was finally within their grasp. And as she opened the book, the whispers rose to a deafening roar, the very walls of the chamber shaking with the power of what they had uncovered. The path had led them to this moment, the moment when the secrets of the past would finally be revealed. But the truth was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be far more dangerous than they could imagine. Chapter 8. The Revelation. The chamber was filled with an oppressive silence, broken only by the soft rustle of Lady Evelyn's fingers turning the ancient pages of the tome. As her hands moved carefully over the worn, yellowed pages, a strange tension hung in the air, thick as the mist outside the cave. The book seemed to resist, as if reluctant to reveal its secrets, but Lady Evelyn's determination was stronger than the fear gnawing at her heart. Holmes and Watson stood a few paces away, their eyes fixed on Lady Evelyn as she read the cryptic words aloud, her voice soft but steady. The words were written in a language that seemed to shimmer, unfamiliar yet eerily recognizable, a language that seemed to stir something deep within her, as though it were not just her mind, but her very soul that was being awakened. The whispering, the voices that had accompanied them on their journey, grew louder now, swirling around them like an unseen wind. It was as if the very air in the chamber was charged, vibrating with the power of what had been hidden for so long. Holmes's sharp gaze flicked toward the shadows, his senses heightened as the atmosphere seemed to shift. Watson, his hand unconsciously tightening around his cane, couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Even though they stood in a chamber of stone, in a place that should have been forgotten by time, something in the darkness seemed to be watching them. He turned his head quickly, but the shadows gave no indication of a presence. Lady Evelyn, her brow furrowed in concentration, reached the end of the page. This isn't just a history," she murmured, her voice filled with disbelief. "It's a prophecy." Holmes's pulse quickened, his mind racing as he stepped closer to her, his eyes scanning the symbols she had uncovered. "A prophecy?" he asked softly. "What does it say?" Lady Evelyn's hand trembled as she pointed to the text. "It speaks of a chosen one, someone with the bloodline of the ancients. It says that when the time is right they will come, and they will awaken the truth hidden beneath the earth. They will uncover the knowledge of the forgotten ones, and with that knowledge comes great power, but also great danger." Holmes was silent for a moment, his mind sifting through the implications of her words. "The chosen one," he murmured, as if tasting the phrase on his tongue. "That would be you, Lady Evelyn." Lady Evelyn recoiled slightly, her eyes widening in shock. "Me? But how could it be? I'm no one special. I don't understand." Holmes looked at her, his expression softening with understanding. "You may not understand it yet, but you are the key to this prophecy. Your bloodline is tied to the knowledge in this book, to the ancient truths that have been hidden from the world for centuries." The wind outside the chamber howled in the distance, as if the very elements were responding to the weight of the moment. The air grew colder, and the shadows in the room seemed to stretch longer, darker, as the realization of what they had uncovered settled over them like a cloak. But as Lady Evelyn's eyes filled with doubt, something else began to stir within the shadows. A figure, indistinct and moving with eerie grace, stepped forward from the corner of the chamber. Its presence was suffocating, as though the very air had thickened and the temperature dropped even further. Watson's hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his cane, his senses fully alert. He could feel the presence, a cold, almost malevolent force drawing closer. Holmes, his gaze sharp as ever, turned toward the figure with quiet calm, but the tension in the air was palpable. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing itself as a man, tall, cloaked in shadows, his features hidden beneath the hood of his dark cloak. He was unmistakably a man of the ancient order, the ones who had been guarding the secret for centuries. His eyes, glowing faintly beneath the hood, pierced through the darkness like twin embers, burning with an intensity that sent a chill down Watson's spine. "Who are you?" Holmes asked, his voice steady but carrying the weight of authority. The figure did not speak immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, his movements smooth and deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. Lady Evelyn, her heart racing, instinctively took a step back, but the figure's eyes never left her. "I am the keeper," the figure finally said, his voice low and resonant, as though it carried echoes from another time. "The keeper of the truth you have uncovered, Lady Evelyn. The one who has waited for you to awaken the knowledge of the ancients." Holmes's mind was already piecing together the puzzle. "The keeper of the truth," he repeated. "What truth are you protecting? What is it you want from Lady Evelyn?" The figure's lips curled into a faint smile, but it was a smile that carried no warmth. "I do not want anything from her," he said. "She is the one who must unlock it. She is the one who must choose." Lady Evelyn, her voice shaking, stepped forward. "What do you mean? Choose? What choice do I have to make?" The keeper's eyes gleamed with an unsettling intensity. "The prophecy is clear. There are two paths, two destinies. One will bring about the revival of the ancient order, the knowledge hidden beneath the earth, and with it, unimaginable power. The other will destroy it, prevent it from ever being used, from ever being unleashed." The room seemed to close in around them, the weight of the decision pressing on Lady Evelyn's shoulders. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as though they were guiding her, urging her toward one path or the other. But which path was the right one? Holmes stepped forward, his voice calm yet resolute. "You speak of power, of knowledge," he said. "But knowledge is not meant to be wielded by one person alone. Power corrupts, and the ancient order, if revived, could bring far more harm than good." The keeper's gaze never wavered. "The choice is hers, Holmes. She must decide whether to embrace the past or to let it remain buried where it belongs. But know this: should she choose to reveal the truth, the world will never be the same. Once it is unlocked, there is no turning back." Lady Evelyn's hands trembled as she clutched the book to her chest, her heart pounding in her ears. "But I don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never asked for this. I never wanted any of this." Holmes's gaze softened as he stepped beside her. "You are not alone in this, Lady Evelyn. Whatever path you choose, we will walk it with you." The keeper, seeing that Lady Evelyn was struggling, stepped back, his form dissolving into the shadows. "The choice is yours, Lady Evelyn," he said, his voice now a distant echo. "But remember, the truth is not always what it seems. The ancient order may hold the answers, but it will also ask for a price." With that, the figure vanished, melting into the darkness as though he had never been there. The whispers faded too, leaving only the distant wind and the stillness of the chamber. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air, and Lady Evelyn stood there, the book in her hands, as the world around her seemed to hold its breath. Holmes turned to her, his voice soft but filled with resolve. "Whatever decision you make, Lady Evelyn, we will face it together. But the path ahead is fraught with danger. We must proceed carefully." Lady Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment as if trying to gather her thoughts. When she opened them again, there was a new strength in her gaze, a quiet determination. "I will make the choice," she said, her voice steady. "But I need to understand. I need to know what lies ahead before I can make it." Holmes nodded, understanding that the true test was not in the path they would take, but in the choices Lady Evelyn would make, and the consequences that would follow. The truth was within their reach, but it was a truth that would change everything. And as the chamber grew still once again, the echoes of the prophecy rang louder in Lady Evelyn's heart. Her choice and the fate of the world rested in her hands. Chapter 9. The chosen path. The air was thick with the weight of the decision. As Lady Evelyn stood in the chamber, the ancient tome still clutched tightly in her hands. The silence that surrounded them seemed almost suffocating. The shadows, once long and foreboding, had now receded into the corners of the stone room, leaving only the soft flicker of torchlight to illuminate their faces. Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn remained motionless, the tension palpable. Holmes, who had been watching her with a quiet intensity, stepped forward. His gaze was steady, unwavering, but there was a softness in his eyes, a recognition of the burden she now carried. He knew as much as she did that whatever decision she made in this moment would change everything. There was no turning back. "Lady Evelyn," Holmes said, his voice calm but laced with the gravity of the situation. "The truth you seek is now within your grasp. But as the Keeper warned us, once the truth is uncovered, there is no going back. You must decide whether to reveal it to the world or to seal it away forever." Lady Evelyn's hands were trembling slightly, her fingers curling tighter around the book. She could feel the weight of the prophecy in her chest, the pulse of history coursing through her veins. It was as if the very fabric of time had unraveled, and now, standing at the precipice of this ancient secret, she was the one who had to choose. "I never wanted this," Lady Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never asked for this power, for this knowledge. But now that I know, I feel as if I'm bound to it. It's calling to me, and I cannot ignore it." Watson, who had been silent until now, stepped closer to her, his voice soft but filled with understanding. "None of us asked for this, Lady Evelyn. But we've come this far together, and we will stand by you, no matter what you decide." Holmes nodded in agreement, his eyes never leaving her face. "The choice is yours, Lady Evelyn. The path you take will shape the future, not only of you and your family, but of the entire world. But remember, knowledge is not always a gift. It is a responsibility, one that demands great sacrifice." The words lingered in the air like a heavy fog, each syllable a reminder of the stakes. Lady Evelyn's mind raced as she looked down at the book in her hands. The symbols that had once seemed foreign now felt familiar, as if they were a part of her, a key to something far greater than she had ever imagined. The whispers that had been faint in the distance began to grow louder again, swirling around them like a wind picking up in intensity. They weren't just voices anymore. They were words, spoken in a language she could now understand, as though the very fabric of the prophecy was coming alive before her eyes. They were urging her forward, but not without caution. It was as if the path itself was warning her of the dangers that lay ahead. Holmes could sense her hesitation, the uncertainty that gripped her heart. He knew the weight of the decision was crushing. "Lady Evelyn," he said gently, The prophecy speaks of two paths, one that will bring light and one that will bring darkness. Only you can decide which path to take. But know this, once the truth is set free, it will spread like wildfire. There will be no more hiding, no more turning away from what is to come. Lady Evelyn's breath quickened as the words sank in. She could feel the pulse of the path beneath her feet, the rhythm of ancient steps that had been walked by those who had come before her. And yet, despite the pull of the knowledge, a sense of fear still gripped her heart. The unknown, the weight of what was hidden, was a burden she was not sure she could bear. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if I make the wrong choice? What if I bring destruction instead of salvation?" Holmes stepped forward, his eyes softening with understanding. "None of us are ever truly ready, Lady Evelyn. But sometimes the truth chooses us, and we have no choice but to accept it." The air seemed to grow heavier, thick with the tension of the moment. Lady Evelyn's gaze lifted from the book, her eyes meeting Holmes's steady, unwavering gaze. She knew that he was right, that there was no easy choice, no simple answer. The truth she held in her hands was not just her own, but the key to something far greater, something that had been locked away for centuries. "Then I will choose," Lady Evelyn said, her voice steady now, her resolve hardening. "I will face the truth, whatever it may bring." Holmes gave a slight nod, his expression soft but filled with pride. "Then we walk this path together. Whatever happens, we are in this as one." With a deep breath, Lady Evelyn opened the tome, her fingers gently brushing the ancient pages. The symbols seemed to glow faintly under her touch, as if the book itself was alive with the power it contained. The whispers grew louder, their voices urging her to read the words aloud, to unlock the truth that had been hidden for so long. She hesitated for a moment, but then, with a deep breath, she began to read. Her voice was low at first, tentative, but as she spoke the words, they seemed to echo through the chamber, reverberating off the stone walls. The air grew heavier with each syllable, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to the power of the ancient text. As Lady Evelyn read, the room seemed to shift. The shadows deepened and the temperature dropped, as if the chamber itself were awakening. The whispers grew louder, rising in pitch, until they became a cacophony of voices swirling around them, drowning out everything else. Suddenly there was a flash of light, blinding and intense. Lady Evelyn stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the book in her hands, the power of its truth pulsing through her veins. The room spun around her, and for a moment, she was lost in a haze of light and sound. When the light finally faded, and the world settled into a strange stillness, Lady Evelyn opened her eyes. The chamber had changed. The walls, once smooth and featureless, were now covered in intricate carvings, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The symbols she had read were no longer just ink on paper. They had come to life, etched into the very fabric of the room. Holmes and Watson stood before her, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. The prophecy had been unlocked, and the truth was now revealed. But what had they uncovered? And what would it mean for the world they knew? Holmes stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Lady Evelyn, his voice quiet but filled with the gravity of the moment. "The truth is out, Lady Evelyn, and now the world must face what we have uncovered." Lady Evelyn, her eyes wide with both fear and wonder, nodded slowly. "I understand, but the truth, it is more than I ever imagined." As the chamber hummed with an energy that seemed to pulse through the very air, Lady Evelyn stood there, the weight of the world upon her shoulders. She had made her choice, The path had been chosen, and now there was no turning back. The revelation had come. The secrets had been unlocked, and with it, a new chapter had begun, one that would change everything. The world, as they knew it, would never be the same again. Chapter 10. The Final Truth. The air in the chamber was thick, heavy with the weight of everything that had come before. Lady Evelyn stood at the centre, still holding the ancient tome, her fingers trembling as she processed what she had just unleashed. The whispers had stopped now, but the hum of ancient power still lingered in the air, a constant, ever-present reminder that the truth had been revealed. And there was no going back. Holmes stood in front of her, his gaze steady and calm, though there was an undeniable flicker of concern in his eyes. Watson, standing a few paces behind, was silent, the magnitude of the moment weighing on him. He could feel it too, the shift in the air, the palpable tension that now hung in the chamber. Something had changed, and it was as if the very world was holding its breath, waiting for the consequences of their actions to unfold. "Lady Evelyn," Holmes said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. "We've unlocked the truth, but what we've uncovered is far more powerful than we ever imagined. The knowledge in that book, it's not just a piece of history, it's the key to something much larger, something that could change the world." Lady Evelyn, still in shock from what had happened, looked up at him, her face pale and drawn. "But what does it mean, Mr. Holmes?" Her voice was barely more than a whisper, but it was filled with fear, confusion, and the weight of a burden she hadn't asked for. "What have we done?" Holmes took a step closer to her, his eyes softening as he spoke. "What we've done is uncover something that has been hidden for centuries, a secret that could reshape the very fabric of the world. But with this knowledge comes great responsibility. The path we have chosen leads us toward a future we cannot yet fully see." The room felt even more still, as if the stones themselves were listening, waiting for the next words to be spoken. Lady Evelyn's grip on the book tightened, her knuckles turning white as she looked at the symbols etched into the pages. It was as if they were alive, as if they were pulling her deeper into their mystery. "I don't understand," she said softly. "What is this knowledge? What does it mean for me? For all of us?" Holmes exhaled slowly, his mind racing with the implications of what they had just uncovered. "The truth, Lady Evelyn, is that the power you now hold is not just power over the past, it is power over the future. The prophecy, the ancient symbols, they were never just meant to be read. They were meant to be understood, to be awakened. And now, you are the one who must choose what to do with this knowledge." The weight of Holmes's words settled heavily on Lady Evelyn's shoulders. She had always felt a connection to the past, to the history of her family, but she had never imagined it would lead to something like this. She had always thought her life was hers to shape, but now, with the truth in her hands, it seemed as though the world itself had been set on a course that could not be undone. "You must decide, Lady Evelyn," Holmes continued. "The knowledge within the book is more than just a story. It is the blueprint for the future, and with it comes a choice. To reveal it to the world, or to keep it hidden, buried where it belongs." Lady Evelyn's heart raced as she looked at the tome in her hands, the ancient text that now seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. She could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders, the responsibility of a decision that would shape not only her future, but the future of every living being. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, trying to push past the fear that clouded her thoughts. She knew, deep down, that there was no escaping the truth now. It had been revealed. The question was, what would she do with it? Lady Evelyn began, her voice faltering. I don't know if I can carry this burden. This truth, is too great, too dangerous. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I reveal it and the world isn't ready for it? What if I keep it hidden and it's locked away forever, leaving humanity in the dark? Holmes took another step closer, his eyes never leaving her. The truth is never easy, Lady Evelyn, but sometimes it must be faced. We cannot live in the shadow of what is hidden. The world may not be ready, but it's not for us to decide when it's ready. We are merely the messengers, the ones who have uncovered it. It is your choice whether to share it or protect it. But know this, whatever path you choose, we will stand by you. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, and Lady Evelyn felt the pull of both options. To reveal the truth would mean unleashing the power of the ancient order upon the world, a force that could either be a great boon or a terrible curse. To keep it hidden would mean consigning humanity to ignorance, locking away a truth that could change the course of history. Her fingers tightened around the book as she stared at the glowing symbols before her. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down, as if time itself was holding its breath, waiting for her decision. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling around her like the wind, their words almost coherent. They were no longer just voices in the air. They were inside her mind, urging her, guiding her. She could hear the ancient call of the path, the call of the truth that had been hidden for so long. Lady Evelyn closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The weight of the moment was almost too much to bear, but she knew that in the end, the only choice she could make was the one that felt right in her heart. I choose, she said softly, her voice steady but filled with a quiet resolve. I choose to reveal it. Holmes's eyes softened, and Watson stepped forward, his face filled with both concern and admiration. Are you sure, Lady Evelyn? He asked gently. Once the truth is out, there is no turning back. Lady Evelyn nodded slowly, her grip on the book tightening once more. I am sure. The world deserves to know the truth. Whatever happens next, I will face it. I will not hide from what has been revealed. Holmes gave a slight nod of approval, his voice calm and soothing. Then we shall move forward together. The future is now in your hands, Lady Evelyn, and we will face it side by side, no matter the cost. With that, Lady Evelyn opened the tome once more, her fingers brushing over the ancient symbols as she began to read aloud. The words seemed to glow brighter, the room humming with energy as the prophecy came to life. The whispers, now clear and undeniable, seemed to rise in a chorus, filling the chamber with the sound of 1,000 voices speaking as one. As the final words left her lips, the air seemed to crackle with power, and the chamber around them began to shift. The walls seemed to pulse, the very stones vibrating with an ancient energy that had lain dormant for centuries. The ground beneath them trembled, and for a moment, everything seemed to blur. Time itself seemed to stretch and bend, as if the world were unraveling at the seams. But as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The chamber grew still again, the air heavy with the realization that something had irrevocably changed. Holmes, Watson, and Lady Evelyn stood there, their hearts pounding, their minds racing with the knowledge that what they had done would change everything. The path ahead was uncertain, the future unknown, but they had made their choice. The truth was now out, and the world, for better or for worse, would never be the same again.